Vivacious, the art and science of living fully, vibrantly, waking up with exuberant energy, an enchantment for life, connection to nature, childlike wonder, feeling overwhelmingly good in your gut, in your body, experiencing the full range of human existence, overflowing with ideas, confidence, authenticity, being outside and healthy and alive. Not this numb, sick, synthetic modern status quo that has leached humanity of our vital wild life force. Tell me, are you just living or are you fully alive? Hello, my beautiful people, and welcome to Vivacious, the podcast, the art and science of living fully and rekindling your zest for life. I'm Logan Hailey, a writer, holistic health expert, and nomad living in my self-built off-grid van, traveling the country to be as close with nature as possible and optimize my joy and energy to spread light in the world, and I am here to help you do the same. This podcast is all about bite-sized tips for vibrant energy and holistic wellness to really optimize every element of your life. And while things like digestion, meditation, mental health, relationships, nature, foraging, hiking, fitness may not seem related on the outside, they actually all go together so intimately to help us create a more wholesome and interconnected and full, vivacious existence. I don't know about you, but it seems to me that modern society has become achingly ill, not just with chronic disease, but with a lack of purpose and a lack of exuberance for living. So many of us have lost our zest. I certainly had lost it when I was younger, and a lot of my journey has been getting back to my authentic self, my inner child, my creative expression, my excitement to wake up every day and do the things I love. And that is something that I want for you, and I really want for everybody, because the world would be such a better place if we all just felt good in our guts, in our spines, in our heads, in our hearts. If we were feeling better, we could actually work together collectively to build much more beautiful and wholesome things instead of degrading the earth, degrading our own health, destroying each other, harming and hurting our relationships and the land by being so disconnected from ourselves and from nature. So today's podcast is a beginning of this bite-sized journey. I really am into quick, actionable tips that are based on science and my own personal growth journey and experience, because I think there's a lot of overwhelming information out there and it's hard to know where to start. A healing journey is not just for the sick or the broken or the grief-stricken, though it's obviously especially important for those people, but it's for anybody that feels like something is just missing, like things could be a little bit better. You could feel more energized. You could wake up more excited with more vitality. And healing is really our own responsibility, though most of us have been told to outsource the answers as if they're outside of us in the minds of doctors or the hands of politicians or the bottles of prescriptions and products we can buy. Outsourcing that healing is extremely profitable for the people who want you to believe that you are not capable of healing your own body and your own mind and your own soul, which, spoiler alert, you totally are. In fact, the more I become empowered to seek out my own information and listen to myself and actually create my own reality, the healthier and happier I have become. So, like I said, I want to help you do the same, starting out with just 7 simple ways, diversified considerations for diving into improving your health on a holistic level. And I know the word holistic is tossed around a lot these days, but I still really like it because it encompasses the interconnected nature of our bodies. Modern medicine, as well as modern agriculture and society in general, has tried to fragment and disassociate all the parts of ourselves, like as if what is happening in your gut is unrelated to what's happening in your mind, or what is happening in the soil is unrelated to what's happening in the water. Or if you're experiencing a bunch of inflammation in your lungs and you can't breathe, that's somehow only isolated to your lungs. These are actually absurd concepts when you think in the grand scheme of the world and of ecology. every living thing on earth is interconnected. Therefore, every living thing inside of you is interconnected. And that includes the billions and billions of microorganisms that live on your skin and in your gut and in your eyelashes. That includes the thoughts that you think every day on a regular basis. It includes the conversations you have and the media input, the songs and the movies and television that input into your brain. That includes all the things happening in your subconscious that you may not even be aware of. So when we're thinking about ailments that people are facing, whether it's back pain and neck pain, or it's really painful digestion or constipation or bloating, or if it's extreme insecurities or an inability to express oneself and be authentic, or if it's toxic relationships and a bunch of pain and grief, all of these things have root causes that are far deeper than just the surface level symptom we're seeing. And so as healers, empowered healers of ourselves, we must disassociate ourselves from that isolated, fragmented way of thinking. So, step one, asking questions. Asking questions takes a certain element of bravery and courage because most of us were actually taught not to ask too many questions. They say, do as I say, not as I do, and don't question me. We're supposed to blindly follow authority and just believe what we're told, which is, of course, very convenient for maintaining the status quo and preventing people from taking their lives into their own hands. But if you're on a mission to be a feral wild wolf like I am, you better start asking questions because that is the secret to your healing. So one of the first and most important questions I always ask in my research is when I'm reading a study or news or I'm listening to a doctor or expert, which of course often have very insightful and important things to learn. I begin by asking, who funded this? This is especially important when reading research papers. I'm a total nerd for the medical literature. Anyone can get on PubMed or Google Scholar and find thousands of peer-reviewed scientific articles. And the rigor of science is still very important to consider in our health in the modern day, though many things that science proves actually is much more easily deduced through our intuition and reconnection to nature. But we'll return to that thought later. On the topic of asking questions, we look at studies, we look at doctors, we look at products, and we say, who funded this? Because the funding is always the funnel to the motive, right? So many studies these days, for example, in the agrochemical industry, we can look at all these studies put out for years and years and years, trying to tell us that glyphosate, the active ingredient in Roundup, does not cause cancer. All these insistence that it does not cause cancer and it is safe for humans because it only acts through this pathway called the shikimate pathway that only exists in microorganisms. Therefore, when you spray glyphosate, it's affecting the microbes, which will effectively kill the broadleaf weeds and plants, and that shikimate pathway doesn't exist in humans, blah, 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 because that study or those many, many studies were funded by the companies that market these agrochemicals. Well, newsflash, our bodies are made up of more microorganisms than human cells. We have billions and billions and billions of microorganisms that do everything inside of us, from absorbing nutrients to helping us create ATP and extract nutrition from our food, help our guts keep functioning, help our lungs create our skin barrier. The microbiome is incredibly diverse and exciting that we'll dive into in a future episode. But clearly, if the pathway that Roundup acts on is through microbes, then clearly it is affecting humans. And later we find out that all those studies funded by the agrochemical industry were telling us that glyphosate doesn't cause cancer, when in reality it does. And it's linked heavily to cancer and has been banned in many countries, but is still it still is the most widely sprayed herbicide in United States agriculture. So I think that's a great example of asking a question to lead back to where information is coming from to see if you can really trust it. So other important questions to ask are the motives behind our doctors and experts we visit. Now, I knock the mainstream medical system a lot because it is a very broken system, but I still believe that some doctors, specifically naturopathic and holistic doctors, can be extremely helpful for many, many people. And they were definitely helpful in my journey to healing my asthma and my lungs. I had an amazing naturopath in Oregon who really broadened my view and gave me so much information, but I would still question her extensively, actually. And you may find in the modern world that people can become annoyed by your questions. My naturopath did not, but certainly my college professors did. Because when you have a lot of questions, again, it questions the status quo, and it often makes people uncomfortable to think deeper than what they've been told to blindly trust. So with my naturopath, though, she gained my trust because I constantly asked her, okay, so where is this supplement coming from? What is this supplement actually going to do to me? Or why is my food sensitivity test telling me that I can't have these things when I have them all the time and it hasn't caused these issues? And then she would dig deeper into the answers of how inflammation can happen in a lot of small ways, which compound into a bigger issue. And that is a great segue into the second tip I have for you today, which is about reducing toxins. Okay, so when we're thinking of toxins and detoxifying our bodies, I like to look at the metaphor of a toxin bucket. Okay, no one is ever going to live fully toxin free in the modern world. As sad as that sounds, I think that it's virtually impossible. And trust me, I have tried. I used to be absolutely stringent and insane about not exposing myself to toxins. But no matter how hard I tried, I would still find them because we live in the modern world and there is literally poison everywhere in our water and in our bodies. I mean, babies are born with phthalates and endocrine disrupting chemicals and glyphosate already inside of them. So to think that we can live completely toxin free is unfortunately unrealistic in my opinion. But to look at our bodies more as buckets with certain capacities for toxins is a more helpful and realistic way to live and function in the modern world. Because the truth is we have detoxifying organs for a reason. We have the lymphatic system and we have our livers and we have all of these ways to actually filter toxins out of us. The issue is when the toxin burden becomes too high that our bodies cannot properly sweat and urinate and defecate and filter out the toxins that we need to get rid of. And that is when the toxin bucket overflows. So when we're thinking of minimizing toxins, of course, I always begin with personal products because it's the easiest way. It's the lowest hanging fruit, okay? When we're looking at our shampoos and conditioners and lotions and toothpaste and perfumes, which I never wear, but I know many people do, deodorants, makeup, these are the most toxic products that humans are putting on their bodies in the modern world, unless you're looking at industrial toxins, which only applies to, a small percentage of the population that are routinely exposed to those things on a daily basis. But what the vast majority of people are being exposed to are the endocrine disrupting chemicals, hormone disrupting chemicals in personal care products. Okay, so the low hanging fruit begins by choosing products that don't have phthalates, BPA, triclosan, pesticides, PCBs, etc. So when we can cut out those low hanging fruits, it's a great way to begin healing ourselves and reducing that toxin load so our detoxification systems can catch up. Okay, removing aluminum containing deodorants and allowing ourselves to sweat, excellent first step, because sweating is super important to getting rid of all the really, really poisonous things that are built up on our skin and below our skin surface. And then once we address those products, of course, we can move into addressing our food and filtering our water or sourcing actual spring water that isn't contaminated with chlorine and all the other pesticides and terrible things that are found in municipal water sources. We can also stop engaging in toxic relationships and thought patterns, which is a lesser discussed form of toxicity in our lives, because anything that is causing you unnecessary stress is clearly going to place a burden on your body, which makes it very difficult for your bodily systems to properly excrete and detoxify on a daily basis. And one other really great tip I've found with reducing the toxin load is just simply moving. That's pretty obvious to most people, but we neglect to realize that exercising, moving, sweating is the number one easiest and best way to detoxify on a regular basis. Even people who drink alcohol, which of course we'll discuss a lot regarding the microbiome and gut health and energy. People who drink alcohol in moderate quantities may find that even just exercising the following day and sweating out those toxins can dramatically improve how they feel. Of course, if you really want to feel good, you stop drinking altogether, which I stopped doing about almost 2 years ago now. And since I stopped drinking, oh my gosh, my life has exponentially improved. I was never a heavy drinker, but even just a small amount of alcohol in my system was disrupting my full equilibrium and really preventing me from experiencing that great, expansive, vivacious zestiness that I was craving. Okay, hopefully that makes sense. We're at number 1, asking more questions. Be the annoying person that asks too many questions, because there's no such thing as too many questions. The more questions you ask, the deeper you dive to the root cause and the things that may be hidden from sight that people, the powers that be, don't want you to know. Number 2, taking into account the toxin bucket and finding all those little ways that you can eliminate toxins, even if it's just cutting out that perfume or cologne, or using a different deodorant, or not using deodorant, and instead spraying magnesium spray on your armpits, which can actually balance the pH and reduce any odors you might have. So, number 3 of becoming your own healer and stop outsourcing your power of healing is to think about your microbiome. I am so obsessed with the microbiome, and I think really everybody should be, because it affects every aspect of our lives. Now, people mostly are familiar with probiotics, and probiotic food like sauerkraut and kombucha, etc., have become very popular in the recent decade, which is really great news because I think they are amazing. But buying probiotics is not the only way to improve your microbiome. Actually, a much more effective and underrated way to improve your microbiome is completely free. And it's literally just getting dirty. And I don't mean like dirty as in grime, but getting dirty as in touching soil, touching trees, swimming in wild water, feeling leaves, petting dogs. All of these things are actually proven to diversify your microbiome, and a greater diversity of microorganisms leads to a more resilient immune system, a more effective digestive system, and actually a happier state of mind. Okay, there's studies that show when we breathe in the smell of soil, there are soil bacteria that emit compounds that literally trigger a dopamine release in our brains that makes us happy. It gives us dopamine, it gives us serotonin, and it can improve the amount of beneficial microbes just circulating in our nasal passageways. Okay, there are also studies that show children who grow up in homes with pets, any outdoor pets, that they actually have a more diversified microbiome just by touching and petting animals, because those animals are outside in the dirt and in the grass, and that's bringing a greater diversity of microbes into us. So I really, really don't like the germophobic approach to modern society. And I think if we all become more educated on free, easy ways to improve our microbiome, we can heal ourselves on that level without needing to buy anything. Okay, I'm really into free stuff. And guess what? One other free tip for optimizing your microbiome is an amazing study I read about simply shaking hands and hugging people. The lost art of a good handshake. When you shake someone's hand, you are exchanging microbes with them. And that may sound gross to some people, but actually it is so incredibly important for strengthening your immune system. And again, diversifying the amount of microbes that are just on your skin. So Oregon State University a few years back did a study they called it the microbial cloud. I like to think of it as an aura, but basically everybody has this aura up to 6 inches away from their body of the cloud of their personalized microbiome. Again, this may sound gross if you're a germaphobe, but it's actually such a beautiful thing because all of these microbes are like protecting us and enhancing our skin barrier and going into our immune system and ensuring that we can fight off the bad guy microbes, I'm putting in quotes, so that we have more of those, quote, good guy microbes to actually boost our resiliency. So if you have that microbial cloud around you and then you're hugging someone and shaking their hand and hanging out with a great diversity of people who live healthy outdoor lifestyles, you are inherently improving your microbiome without needing to buy anything. Hallelujah, I don't want to buy any more shit. Okay, now, number 4 is forgiveness. So as you can see, we're going to go into a different realm beyond just physical health. Because like I said, all these things are obviously related. Now, forgiveness has been one of the most important steps in my journey to removing toxicity from my mind and from my heart. There's an old quote that I love that's been attributed to several different people. I'm not sure if Nelson Mandela, St. Augustine, or some guy named Malachi McCourt might have said it. But the quote goes like this: resentment is like drinking poison and then hoping it will kill your enemies. Resentment is extremely harmful to the psyche, and that can actually ripple effect into the rest of our life, affecting our relationships, our happiness, our physical health, our energy. So forgiveness of the people and experiences that hurt you can actually be such a transformative way to take your healing into your own hands. And my favorite way personally to do this is with writing letters. I'm a writer. I love to write. I write a lot of people letters, but forgiveness letters have been the most transformative. And one of my favorite things about them is that you don't have to send them. So a really cool exercise that I started years ago when I was going through therapy and trying to like heal my very, very, very broken heart and mind and confidence was to write a letter to each of the people who I felt had hurt me the most and to tell them I forgive them. And most of those letters I actually burned and I never sent. Some of them I did send, though I didn't allow like those people to come back into my life in any way. I just sent them the letter and it felt like this big release for me. And I was just like, I forgive them. I'm not going to hold on to the resentment anymore, because when you hold on to resentment against other people, again, you're outsourcing your healing. You're blaming other people for feeling like crap. And I don't know about you, but I want to be in control of my happiness and my life. I don't want to allow other people to win power over me by moving through life years and years after holding on to a resentment, saying, they did this to me. They hurt me. They're the reason I'm upset. No, 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 no. I am the reason that I choose happiness, or I am the reason that I am upset. Because we have the power to shift our minds at any moment. And that takes obviously a long process, especially for people who have done terrible, terrible, terrible things, which there's a lot of that in the world. But personally, I still hold true, regardless of how small or big the issue. Eventually, choosing forgiveness is the quickest route to personal liberation, because when you forgive people who harmed you, you can accept that, you know what, maybe it wasn't personal. And likely it was not personal. It was actually their own war against themselves or against the world, their own wounds that caused them to treat you in a terrible way. And that's their problem. I'm not going to live with that burden. I'm not going to walk around with the weight of someone who just gushed all their hideous pain onto me and projected that onto me. And now I'm supposed to walk around with that? No way. No way. Forgive him. Move on. We keep flying because we want to be happy and we want to be free. All right. Number 5, in being your own healer, inner child work. Okay. Healing the inner child has been absolutely transformative for me by getting back to the things I loved as a kid. For me, it's been very easy because I have been a writer since the day my hand could hold one of those little fat baby pencils. And I've been writing stories forever. But in my adolescence and my early adulthood, I felt insecure about sharing my stories and sharing my poems because I felt like they weren't good enough, because the whole world tells you that, like, if you're not a professional and you didn't study this, then you aren't worthy to produce it. And I think that's a bunch of bullshit. So I dove back into that inner child mindset of just creating for the sake of creating, to just have fun. And when I started playing again, oh my gosh, my whole life changed. My physical health transformed. My skin took on a new glow. Again, I didn't buy any products. I just started skipping around and laughing and looking at the plants and playing with my dogs and being goofy and not being so serious. And I think if more adults were able to tap into that, to let go of that very serious facade that we're told to carry around, we would be able to have a lot more fun and heal that part of ourselves that felt that we had to hide or suppress our creative, playful, fun energy. And the sad thing I see the most in our modern world is that adults really depend on alcohol and substances to let that playful side of them out. I mean, you go into any whatever bar or club, I don't go to them, but I'm sure this is what happens, is you see that people start to loosen up and dance only after they've had a few drinks. And then they start talking and sharing more about themselves. And then they start laughing louder and having more fun. And really, they never needed the alcohol to break that shell. What they needed was their inner child to feel safe and free. So my biggest advice to you, if you want to start the whole inner child journey of healing that part of yourself, is to think back to what your favorite things were when you were a kid, before the world smashed all the fun out of you and tried to suppress all of that and tell you to be serious and stand in line and listen to what everybody's saying and sit inside and be tame and follow the herd and be just like everybody else. What were you doing before all that domestication happened? And that is your wild, free self. Were you running around naked in the woods? I wish I was doing that as a kid. If you were, I think you might need to do that also as an adult, but maybe in a very private place. Just a recommendation. But if you loved, playing sports or painting or, making little poems or designing, I don't know, little businesses. I had a doggy daycare. I always loved entrepreneurship. As I've returned to entrepreneurship in my adulthood with more confidence, that also heals the inner child part of me that just wanted to start things and do things. And again, have fun. Play is intrinsically healing for the body, mind, and soul. And number 6 is silence and sunshine. How many of our woes could be solved by just sitting quietly in the sun? Okay, the sun is so medicinal, and it is absolutely absurd to think that people have become fearful of the sun. The sun has sustained life on Earth since the beginning of time, and all of our ancestors lived and loved and laughed. Live, laugh, love, such a Southern saying. They all thrived under the sun. And now we're told that the sun causes skin cancer and that the sun causes all these ailments and you need to cover your skin and wear a toxic sunscreen, which, by the way, sunscreen is a major toxin and endocrine disruptor that disrupts your hormones and alters your skin barrier. And it prevents you from absorbing vitamin D. And vitamin D is linked directly to serotonin production. And vitamin D is also indicated, vitamin D deficiency is indicated in skin cancer as well as many other cancers. So if you want to be happier and healthier, absolutely, you need to have sun on your bare skin every day. Many experts suggest, 20 to 30 minutes. I personally prefer many, many hours the entire day, if possible. I do wear a hat to cover my face because I don't want to burn my face. And if you're living an indoor lifestyle, of course, it takes a gradual adjustment to be outside more. So you can start, again, with just that 15-minute mark of sun on your bare skin without sunscreen. Just notice how much better you feel when you sit in silence and you just breathe and you feel those rays caressing you and you remember, this is what it's like to be a human, to be an animal. Because isn't it wild when you look at animals, our dogs and cats, they look for the sunniest window to lay down. Animals are always wanting to be in the sun. They crave that, especially if they live indoors, okay? Everything on Earth thrives with sunlight, and it is absolutely absurd to think that humans are separate from that reality. The sun is essential to our happiness, and it's very important also to our circadian rhythms and our sleep cycles because the different wavelengths of light that we receive from the sun at different kinds of times of day directly affect our neurological activity, which is why I am obsessed with watching the sunrise and the sunset. It is a perfect daily ritual that reconnects you to the cycles of nature. Again, it's free, it's easy, you can do it anywhere, even in the biggest, shittiest city. Sorry, city dwellers, I hate the city, but you can still do it there. And some sunrises and sunsets are really beautiful in this city. Maybe it's because of the clouds and the smog or whatever weird stuff is happening up in the sky. But just seeing those colors, absorbing the red light of sunrise and sunset, and then also activating the blue light that occurs during peak noon, helps to regulate your circadian rhythm, which is your body's internal clock, to help you get better sleep and have more energy and, again, feel fully alive. And when you combine that with silence, instead of listening to music or podcasts or this constant stream of just like noise that exists in the modern world, gosh, it's just a relief. It's just a breath of, sunlight, silence. You'll start to crave it. I promise. Give it a try. And last but not least, stop suppressing symptoms, whether they are physical or emotional or spiritual. Symptoms are the arrows, the big road signs like, hello, go this way, look over here, look at me. Symptoms are your body or your mind crying out for your attention. Yet, of course, the modern medical system is obsessed with suppressing symptoms. Let's look at fevers, for example. Your body, when it's exposed to a, quote, bad guy microorganism or bad guy virus, there's also a lot of really important, quote, good guy viruses. But when you're exposed to a pathogenic organism that could potentially make you sick, your body and your immune system initially elevate your body temperature so they can kill it off. That fever is productive. Our bodies know what to do to heal themselves. But guess what we're told? Oh no, it's a fever. You need to go buy some, I don't even know the prescription names anymore. Is it Advil or Tylenol or whatever? NyQuil? You need to go buy one of these prescriptions to suppress your fever. And think about how absurd that is. Your body is raising your temperature to kill these pathogenic organisms, and you're taking something to suppress the symptom. That doesn't get to the root cause. That suppresses the symptom, and it actually can hinder your immune system's ability to develop a resistance and immunity to that pathogen. Another example of suppression is emotional suppression. I'm very, very passionate about this one because I was a person that suppressed my emotions for most of my life, and it inhibited me from fully expressing who I am, and it caused a lot of grief and pain inside of me. I never, ever cried. I never wanted to be an emotional person. I never wanted to show emotions, and I thought that if I revealed emotions, I would be perceived as weak and other people could manipulate and control me. And actually quite the opposite is true. Now that I have tuned into my emotions and I've allowed them to flow, I like to think of emotions as a water-like energy. That's actually a very common analogy you'll find in the soulful healing sort of world, but emotions really are like water. And our society, we're told to bottle them up and dam them. Quite an amazing metaphor there when you think of how all of our rivers are dammed. And it prevents the natural flow of water through the landscape. Emotion is energy in motion. Our emotions need to flow through us. We need to feel them. We don't need to suppress them and numb them and take drugs and alcohol and mind numb our brains with TV and distractions. That stuff is making us sicker because it's suppressing what we actually need to feel. And so when you think about ending that suppression, it may sound kind of scary, like, oh my gosh, all of a sudden the dam is going to break and all of this pent up grief is just going to flow out of me all at once. And that does often happen to people when they really begin, get their hearts cracked open and begin a like therapeutic personal growth journey. But it doesn't have to actually happen that way. And you don't have to be super extreme in ending that suppression. Instead, you can just look at little emotions throughout the day when you start to feel really anxious about something and your mind's going far into the future. Instead of suppressing that by, I'll just have a glass of wine after work, or, you'll smoke a cigarette. Please, I really hope you don't smoke cigarettes, but, you can talk about that later. Or smoke weed, or whatever it is that people do to numb themselves. There's a million ways that people numb themselves. Watch TV to avoid thinking about their life and their problems. When you stop doing that, suddenly you can just feel and you can just sit with the discomfort of an uncomfortable emotion, because really all emotions are functional. Otherwise we wouldn't feel them. It's like, why would these things exist within us as human beings if we weren't meant to feel them? They're not going to destroy us. They are meant to be felt so we can dig deeper into who we are and what we need to learn from each experience that we are given and gifted, because all experiences really are gifts, even the painful and uncomfortable ones. So instead of rushing to cover up the, quote, ugly emotions, what if we just felt them? And we can do that in private, or we can process with people we care about, or we can find a therapist that we trust to actually unload and unpack those things. Because again, the wound and the symptom actually holds the cure. So just like that fever, we don't want to suppress the fever. Our body needs the fever, the raised temperature to actually beat the virus. And similarly, we don't need to suppress the tears. Our body actually needs to let the crying, let the grief, let the sadness and pain, let it flow through us so that we can come out the other side and realize what we needed to learn and what we needed to process and stop suppressing that. So, getting a little deeper there, a little sneak peek of some future episodes. All of these things may seem unrelated, but let me tell you, they're actually so intricately linked together. And so when we start taking our healing into our own hands, we can turn it into our superpower and take responsibility for our lives and stop outsourcing. Stop outsourcing your power and your healing and your capacity to really revolutionize yourself, because nobody else actually can give you the answers. You are the only person that has ever been you as your soul in your human body. Therefore, only you know the unique combination of questions and answers and actions that you need to take. And what works for one person won't always work for another, which is why it's so important for us to explore a diversity of opinions and not just listen to the monoculture mainstream narrative that tries to, oversimplify everything. Shit is complex, man. Life is complex. I'm not going to buy into this oversimplification. I am a multidimensional being and I am unique, just like you are. So, with that, in recap, the 7 simple ways to become your own healer, or at least to start. 1, ask more of those tough questions. Ask yourself the tough questions too. Number 2, address your toxin bucket, reducing the low-hanging fruit first so you can at least catch up. Number 3, learning about your microbiome and diversifying it by going outside, getting dirty, touching the soil, hugging people, petting dogs, petting animals. Number 4, forgiveness, letting go of the blame and the resentment and the anger at people who hurt us, because they were probably just hurting inside too, and they projected that onto you. And when you forgive them, you are set free and they no longer have power over you. Number 5, the inner child work, returning to that sense of play and excitement. That's where the zest of life is. Quit being so dang serious all the time. Where are we at? Number 6, silence and sunshine. Don't be afraid of the sun, baby. The sun's got the secrets and the answers. And number 7, stop suppressing the symptoms. Stop suppressing the emotions. You got to feel it to heal it. You got to let it all flow through you. And then you become your own healer. And then you live a vivacious, zesty, full life. Please join me on the next episode of Vivacious. Again, I'm Logan Hailey. Please message me on Instagram at naturallylogan, or comment on the YouTube video below, or get in touch with me, naturallylogan@icloud.com. I want to hear from you, and let's talk soon. Have a beautiful day or evening wherever you are, and please, please, please go see that sunset. Mwah.